So I have a t-shirt problem apparently, because every time I go on Ravelry and I try to find patterns for t-shirts, either in knitting or crocheting, I have a very hard time finding patterns that I like. It's usually sorted by most popular, but you can also sort by hot right now, and every time I click through the first couple of pages, I just can't find very many patterns that speak to me. And I have identified two problems with the patterns that are mostly being shown to me. The first one is that I don't really like the cut or the shape of them. I feel like when you look for sweater patterns, for example, there's a lot more variety when it comes to that. While for t-shirts, to me, it all looks very plain, very feminine, very tight-fitting. They have very short sleeves, they have lace, they're very office appropriate, 40-year-old, I don't know. And that's great if the designers and the people who make these patterns enjoy that, but it's just not really my personal style. And the second problem I have identified is the fiber content. I know that a lot of people who make patterns for knitting or crocheting, but I think it's more of a problem in knitting, live in relatively cold places where it's cool throughout the year, even in the summer, so they might need a thicker shirt out of animal fiber or even a long sleeve in the summer. But where I live, it gets relatively warm, so it's not unheard of that it's 30 degrees or more for multiple weeks in the summer. And I would still like to put on a handmade item, and I also think that if I take the time to sit down and make a short sleeve of any kind, then I want to actually be able to wear it, not just for like 1 month in the spring, but for the entire warm season. So I have compiled a list of patterns that I think look really cool and that can be made out of fibers that are suitable for the summer, and I would like to share those with you. You may be wondering who made me the queen of cool girls, who gets to decide what we are wearing this summer, and to that I want to say I'm also wondering that. I don't know. I've just decided that my style is cool now, live with it. Also, a friend of mine recently called me a fashion icon. I think that mostly has to do with the fact that we live in a small city and that nobody dresses interesting here, but yeah, that, and also I'm wearing a cool scarf, so just take it from me. I'm very cool, and these are my patterns. I structured this video into two parts. First, a knitwear section where I talk about all of the knits, and then a crochet section. So in case you only do one of the crafts, you can skip ahead. And the knitwear section is going to be a good amount longer than the crochet section, just because I found a lot more patterns in knitting. So I have divided that further into, first of all, like plain tees, like basics, but in an interesting shape. Then we have structured knits, we have fun sleeves as a category, because I somehow found a lot of patterns with fun sleeves. Then we have stripes in the end. So I'm going to give you some info on the pattern, I'm going to give you some yarn options and some of my ideas on how to adjust this pattern, on what colors to use, on how to style it, and then you will find all of the patterns down below, and let's get started. So I scooched over a little bit, so I'm supposed to put pictures here. And the first picture I'm putting there is the picture of the boring tee by Spectacle Strick. I don't think this is boring at all. I really enjoy the boxy fit, I enjoy the very long sleeves, I enjoy the length that she knitted this to, and I also really like that it does have ribbing, but it doesn't cinch in at the bottom. So I think this is very cool. And it comes in sizes extra small for a finished bust circumference of 112 centimeters to 2XL for a finished bust circumference of 129 centimeters. It is a DK weight yarn and knitted on 3.5mm needles, which is fairly common for a summer garment, I guess. And it is a cotton and wool yarn that I unfortunately wasn't able to find for where I live, but I would probably replace this with cotton wool by Rowan, or you could go for Drops Cotton Merino if you wanted a cheaper option. I have very few notes on this. I think it's cool. I would make sure to pick a size where you have enough positive ease, because I looked at the project photos and I feel like a lot of people, or for a lot of people, it looks like the garment is a bit smaller than I would have anticipated it being from the product photo. So I would probably size up in this, but other than that, I think this is really cool. I think you can do literally anything with it. You could make it in any color, you could slap stripes on there if you wanted to, you could even do a little color work if you enjoyed doing something like that. So I think it's a very cool basic option that gives you a lot of room to kind of experiment for yourself if you're into that, but also this is just perfectly fine to make it 2 pattern and just wear it for every day. This is the tee number 1 by my favorite things knitwear, and as the name suggests, number 1, it is the most basic kind of tee you could probably find. It is similarly oversized, it has similar long sleeves that I enjoy. However, it is more airy and drapey than the previous version. It has a bit of a thinner fabric, I guess. And I would probably make it the tiniest bit shorter, but that's up to whatever you would like, of course. It comes in sizes extra small with a finished bust circumference of 94 centimeters to 4XL with a bust circumference of 146 centimeters and is intended to have 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. It is made with a lace and a fingering weight yarn held together and knitted on 3.5mm needles, and the yarn consists mainly of cashmere. So for me, I would be worried that would get a bit too warm. Also, obviously, cashmere is a quite expensive option. So I wouldn't change anything about the fit, but I might go for a different yarn. I think Summer in Cashmere by BC Garn would be a good idea because it also has a cashmere content, but it is mainly cotton, I believe. So it would be a bit cooler from the fabric. And I think BC Garn Bio Balance would also be a good option. That is a good cotton and wool mix. So you still get like the drape and the softness, but a bit more summer appropriate. And I would probably make this in like this popular matcha green color. I think both of the yarns I mentioned have a good option available for that in their color selection. So I think that would look really cool. This is the Una Tee by Morka Knits, and it is probably the most simplistic design of the ones I have selected. It is similarly boxy, but not quite as oversized as the other two I've mentioned. And it comes in only 3 sizes, from an extra small to small with a finished bust circumference of 101 centimeters up to a large to extra large with a finished bust circumference of 117 centimeters. And it is knitted on a DK weight yarn in 4mm needles. There are lots of suggested yarns, so you can pick whatever you would like. There are some options for holding yarn single, there's some options for holding multiple yarns together, there's cashmere options, there's silk options, there's merino options, there's mohair options. So I think you can truly find something that you would like there. I think here, because of the oversized fit, you could totally get away with using something a little more summer friendly. I mean, there are silk yarns suggested, but you could probably also go for something containing cotton or linen if you would like that, as long as you're aware that it won't fall quite as nicely, most likely. I really enjoy the white sample that she has here because I feel like it looks the most like a store-bought basic t-shirt that is not even knitted necessarily. So this is just a great, very basic. I would make this longer. I don't like my items to be quite as cropped as this, but you can obviously choose any length or any color for this that you would like. It is a good project to do the micro stripes on that have been everywhere if you would like to do that. They have been everywhere, similar to the matcha color, but I think this is just great as a basic t-shirt as well. Moving on to still plain t-shirts, but some that have a little bit more interest to them. The first I want to introduce you to is the Poppy Tee by Petite Knit. I think this is a relatively popular pattern still, so I think you might have seen this. It is still very basic, but it has the tiniest bit of a puff sleeve due to the ribbing on the arm. And I also really enjoy the length at which this hits her. It is also a very size inclusive pattern. It comes from an extra small for a finished bust circumference of 90 centimeters up to a 5XL, I think, with a finished bust circumference of 155 centimeters and is intended to have 5 centimeters of positive ease. It is knitted on a sport weight yarn in 3.5mm needles, and the suggested yarns are cashmere yarns by Cardiff or by Lang Yarns, or a merino help with a mohair, and there you just have the basic options of knitting for Olive or Sunday Scarn. This is tight fitting enough that I wouldn't necessarily swap out any of those yarn options for something colder like a cotton or a linen. But if I were to make this, I would pick a very basic color as well, like a beige or a light brown, and I would make this with spring in mind and to wear it under blazers and cardigans in the autumn or in the winter. For me, I think this wouldn't work as a summer item, but if you live somewhere a little bit colder, I think this might work for you for summer as well. This is the Betsy cardigan by Inka Sweetson, I don't know, don't sue me. I enjoy about this that it has this high neck, and I also like that even though it is a cardigan, it has an O-neck, which is not the most common in cardigans and which is a design feature I really enjoy because I don't like the V-neck cardigans at all. It comes from a size extra small with a bust circumference of 80 centimeters to an extra large with a bust circumference of 120 centimeters, and is knitted in a DK weight on 4mm needles. It doesn't really give you yarn suggestions, it only says use a DK yarn. But this is relatively tight fitting with 0 to 5 centimeters of positive ease, therefore I also wouldn't recommend something that isn't stretchy. You could go for merino, where Drops Daisy would meet gauge exactly, and Sunday Scarn Double Sunday would also work. Both of these have a very wide color selection, I believe, and then you could just do whatever you wanted color-wise. You could make it very basic, go for like a white, you could go for a very bright color like she did. I really like her button choice in this as well. I like that they're contrasting and so small. And I enjoy that you can wear it as a t-shirt, but you could probably put it on over a dress as well as like actually a little cardigan. So I feel like this is a very versatile item that you can do a lot with. You can change the vibe up a lot with your button choice, which is also cool. So I think while this isn't usable for like the hottest kind of weather probably, it would be a great option to have in the spring and then put on maybe in the summer evenings when you're still sitting outside and you kind of want a sleeve to cover up your shoulders. So I think for that it would be very usable. This is the Sim Blouse by Simone Berg, and I think this is a very interesting pattern. It is essentially just a basic shirt that you feed some yarn through to cinch it in at the waist, but it makes it look very elegant and cool. And I totally enjoy the sleeve length on this, even though it's relatively short, which is not usually what I go for, but I feel like because they are kind of diagonal and the waist is so cinched in, it kind of creates this V shape on your body that is very flattering. It is knitted on an Aran weight yarn in a 4.5mm needle, which for a summer garment is actually quite big, so this would probably be a relatively quick project in case you want to get something ready for right now. The yarn combination that's suggested is kind of confusing to me, so it just suggests an alpaca linen yarn and an alpaca silk yarn, and I assume they're supposed to be held together, but it doesn't really say. The fiber content to me seems relatively sensible. It is a summer garment, so I like that there's linen in there, but I also understand that this garment needs some drape, and also the fuzz is kind of a part of the design, so I get why she chose an alpaca yarn to go with it. The specific brand that she used isn't really available where I live, and I couldn't really find any other alpaca and linen mixes that would work for this gauge, so if you have any suggestions you can let me know, because I would actually really like to make this. This is like on my top couple of items to make list. I have been thinking about some different yarn options. You could probably go for Sunday Scarn Poppy, which has a wool content and is, I think, alpaca and cotton other than that, so it might be a little bit too warm for me. I also found a very pretty yarn called Camero's Host. I don't know, it's not necessarily a brand that's very much around, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really heard of it before. But it is available where I live, and it has cotton but also some cashmere and some wool, so I think you could get a similar look with it, even though I also wouldn't be sure about how warm it would be. But I think it has some very, very beautiful, like slightly variegated colors that would look good with this garment. I wouldn't change anything about the fit, but I was thinking, I don't know if the ribbon and bow trend is still as ongoing as it was a year ago, but if you wanted to, you could probably use some ribbon to feed it through at the waist instead of the yarn. And that is a very easy thing to swap out later in case you ever decide you don't like it anymore, or I don't know, the trend kind of ends and you don't want to wear it like that anymore. So I think that would be a really cool option to get a matching color ribbon, or maybe even a contrast color ribbon or something white and lacy maybe, and pull that through and tie some bows. So I think that would look really cool as well. For the last item in the plain category, and kind of as a bridge to the structured knits category, we have the Lyra tee by Irene Lynn. This is mostly plain, but it has a little bit of structure going on at the arms and at the bottom of the body, which I think adds something really interesting to this shirt. But it is very lightweight and airy other than that, which I enjoy. It comes in sizes 1 for a bust circumference of 86 centimeters to a size 10 for a bust circumference of 153 centimeters, and is knitted on a fingering weight on 3.5mm needles. The suggested yarn is a cashmere and silk mix by Cardiff Cashmere, which I guess is probably one of the most expensive yarn combinations you can get. So I think a lot of people are not using that specific yarn. I did see in the projects section that there were some people who used a cotton or a linen. And while that would work, because this is an oversized t-shirt, like you would still be able to get it on and not necessarily feel uncomfortable in it, but I feel like the drape really adds to this t-shirt, so I don't know if I would like to use something like a cotton or linen. I would probably go for a merino silk mix. I think Lana Grossa has one called Setosa that is relatively affordable still. It is not necessarily a budget-friendly option either, but it cuts a good €20 per skein off of the price. It would also work in a merino, but obviously that would be warmer. I enjoy the white that she knitted this in, but I think it would also look really cool in a pastel color. Moving on to the structured knits, this is the blouse number 3 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It has this very interesting and unique shape that I don't think I've seen in many items. And it has this little bit of bulkiness around the neck here, which usually I feel like you're trying to get rid of, but is kind of a design feature in this, so I think that's really cool. I like the sleeve length, and I like the length that the body is knitted to, so I would say proportion-wise this looks perfect to me. And it comes in sizes extra small for a bust circumference of 99 centimeters up to 4XL with a bust circumference of 156 centimeters, and is knitted in a DK weight yarn on 3.5mm needles. I will say that all of the suggested yarns are cashmere yarns that could probably be replaced with merino, but not really with something more summer appropriate. However, since this has such a high neck, I don't think I would put this on in summer anyways, so that's not really a problem for me. I would probably go for merino on this because I don't think I'm willing to spend on a cashmere yarn if it's not an item that I can wear year round. So I think the Gepard Woolia would work, I think the Long Yarns Merino 120 would work, the Sunday Scarn Double Sunday would work, and I think you could probably make the Drop Stacey work if you wanted to be a little more on the budget. Construction wise, I would stick to the pattern exactly, and for the colors I really like the neutral that the sample is knitted in, but I could also imagine it very well in a more muted color like a muted blue, which is available definitely in the Merino 120 and in this Double Sunday. I think the other two have more brighter colors, but you could obviously do that as well if you would prefer. The only thing I will say is that on this item, or most of the structured items, I wouldn't go for a dark color since that will just make the structure disappear. But other than that, I think color-wise you can do whatever you want here. One of my top contenders for actually getting knitted up this year is the Lacy Loops tee by Other Loops. I really enjoy this design because it has the lace, which makes it very interesting to knit and also to look at, but it also has this vertical ribbing at the bottom, which kind of breaks the lace a little bit and makes it look more rustic and fit more to my style than most other lacy tees I see around. I also really like the yarn choice, but I'll get to that later, and it is very airy, and I would personally feel comfortable just wearing a bra under this, so very appropriate for summer. It comes in sizes extra small with a bust circumference of 109 centimeters up to extra extra large with a bust circumference of 138 centimeters, and is knitted on fingering weight yarn depending on the yarn you use, either a 4 or 4.5 millimeter needle. There are two different yarns suggested. Both are silk yarns, and one is held single, one is held double. And I would go with a similar fiber. Both of these options are relatively affordable for 100% silk yarn. But if you wanted to find something a little bit cheaper, I could imagine this in a viscose and cotton or linen mix relatively well. That will give you a bit more structure than this item has with the silk, but because of the viscose you will still have the drape and you will still have a warm weather appropriate fiber. Obviously, if you're trying to achieve the exact same look as the photo, I would stick with what the designer suggests. And if I wanted to replace these, the Iskar Yarn Trio 1 would work, but that's basically the same price as the suggested yarns. So unless you have a problem with silk specifically, I wouldn't really go for that. Or you could use the Sandesgarn Tin Lina, which has a similar fiber combination and is a little bit more affordable. I think this looks great in the light neutral, especially since it is such an entirely summer appropriate garment. I would probably make it in a similar color, something very light. Obviously, if you go for black, you'll get more warm, so I would just go all out for the warmest days of the years with this. But both the Iskar Yarn Trio 1 and the Tin Lina by Sandesgarn come in some lovely green shades that I find very intriguing. Another great option by Other Loops is the Tight Loops tee. I enjoy this design as well. It doesn't have quite as much going on as the other items, but it doesn't have holes, so if you're someone who wants to be a bit more covered up, I think this would be a great option for you. However, I will say that the sizing is kind of confusing to me. So it comes in sizes extra small, which has a 97 centimeter bust circumference, up to an extra large, which has a 118 centimeter bust circumference. And I feel like in the picture, at least it looks like to me, that this garment has quite a bit of positive ease. So I would probably go for a large on this, so the second biggest size. And I am not the largest person. I feel like there's quite a few people who are bigger than me or have a bigger bust circumference. And I don't know, so it's probably not the most size inclusive garment if you're a bit bigger or if you have a larger chest. It is knitted on a sport weight yarn on 3mm needles, and I feel like the yarn combination is quite unique. She goes for the Trio 2 from Iskar Yarn, which has linen, cotton and lyocell. So it is a summer appropriate yarn, but she pairs it with a lace weight alpaca. I have personally not come across many shirts or summer garments that use a combination such as this, but I think it's relatively interesting. I wouldn't be sure how to replace things here necessarily. I think if you wanted to make it more summer appropriate, you could just omit the alpaca and then go for a yarn similar to the Trio 1, or Trio 2, but a bit thicker to meet gauge. And I looked around a bit, I found the Hobie seashell that could work for this. But of course, if you do that, you lose all of the light, fluffy fibers in there. So I would personally just stick with the suggested yarn. I feel like this shirt is not particularly airy anyway, so it wouldn't be suitable for me to wear in the warmest summer days anyways. And in that case, I would be fine with the alpaca. I also think that the Trio 2 has some really cool shades available, especially the reds. I enjoy those a lot. I think they're called Strawberry and Bordeaux. So I'll probably go for that option and just have this as a shirt for the cooler days, and I again feel like this is a shirt you could probably also wear during the colder months if you pair it with a cardigan or with a blazer, because this, as I said, it's a bit calmer than the other structured knits I suggested. Now for my fun sleeves segment, the first shirt I want to suggest is the Sylvester Tee by Anna Hermann Sorensen, I guess. It is more tight-fitting than what I would usually prefer, but I think the sleeves look really cool on this, and I believe that this is probably more of a timeless silhouette than all of the oversized fits I've presented so far. Also, I think it's a really cool idea to use glitter, because why wouldn't you? And it comes in sizes 1, which has a 75cm bust circumference, up to a 16 that has 150cm bust circumference. This is knitted on a fingering weight on 3.5mm needles, and it recommends 100% merino yarn held with a glittery thread. Again, this is not necessarily summer appropriate to me, but it makes sense for this garment to achieve the drapey fabric, and I would probably be willing to have a shirt in a merino if that means it's a really cool shirt. I think depending on which color you choose, this has the potential to look a bit Christmassy because of the glitter. So I don't know, I wouldn't go for a green, I wouldn't go for a red, I wouldn't go for a white. So I like the dark colors, the navies and the blacks, which makes it even less summer appropriate. But I think if you either live in a colder place, you could make this work, but also this is a very versatile t-shirt, so I think you could make this work for some special occasions in winter as well, like for New Year's or for Christmas, depending on which colors you go for and I don't know what vibe you choose. But yeah, not necessarily the most summer tee, but still a cool tee, still probably worth having in your wardrobe. So the Flutter Butter shirt by Jessie Made Designs is a bit more girly than what I would usually go for, but I somehow really enjoy this. I like the baby tee kind of fit. I like the ruffles on it, especially that the ruffles are on the sleeves but also continued on the body. And it comes in sizes extra small with a bust circumference of 81cm up to a 5XL with a bust circumference of 158cm. It is knitted in fingering weight yarn and on 4 or 5mm needles, depending on if you're working on the sleeves or on the body. And she suggests yarns at 3 different price points, which I don't see very much and I think is a very cool idea. I will say that the first one is very expensive and the second and third one aren't really available where I live. I think you could probably go with a BC Garn Simia Silk Bloom as a mid-price option, which does include some silk. But when choosing a size, I would make sure to maybe size down, because I've seen from the project photos that this item looks a bit large on some people. I'm not sure if that's the sizing of the pattern or just the size which they chose for themselves, but I feel like once it gets too large, it doesn't really look good anymore and the ruffles just kind of hang down, they don't like poke up as much. So yeah, I would just make sure to go a bit smaller. And the Samia Silk Bloom comes in a couple of fitting pastel-y options that I would quite enjoy with this, but obviously also some basic colors if you like that better. A very similarly fitted top that I would like to suggest is the Lily Sheer top by Irene Lynn. This looks kind of the same but sheer, which is very cool, and it comes in sizes 1 with a bust circumference of 96 up to a size 9 with a circumference of 156. It is knitted with a lace weight yarn on 4mm needles, and it has the classic suggestion of knitting for olive soft silk mohair as a yarn, but you could go for drops kid silk if you wanted something cheaper. I would make this longer. I like the amount of positive ease that it has, and I don't know, it's not really a shirt, it's more of a fashion statement. I think like you wouldn't obviously wear this by yourself. I mean, I don't judge, I don't know where you go to, but I wouldn't wear this by itself. So I would maybe go for like an ashy grey in color, just kind of have a hint of something over a tank top. But this would obviously also be a good opportunity to choose a brighter color if you don't usually go for them, because since this is so see-through, it's not quite as much in your face. There's a similar shirt to this. It's called Ghost Whisperer by Park Williams, and that is also made with a silk mohair, so that would be another option if you like this silhouette in general. And she also has a similarly shaped option with a bit of a thicker and warmer yarn if you want to dress up like a princess, or I don't know, if you live in a bit of a colder climate. Moving on to my section, Fun with Stripes. I obviously have to mention the Rumble Raglan by Lydia Morrow. I think this pattern is really cool. I think you can make this your own very much with the wide variety of colors you could use. You could probably make this as a scrap yarn project as well if you wanted. And it comes in sizes 1 with a bust circumference of 77.5 up to a 9 with a circumference of 142.5. It is knitted on a fingering weight yarn with 3.75 millimeter needles. Wow, that is very specific. But it is made out of 100% merino, which I would keep because this has to be very stretchy, so I just don't see how any other fiber would work well for this. It has 2 yarns suggested, but it says you can use any fingering weight merino, so the knitting for olive should work. I think that's something a lot of people have at home. However, she recommends a superwash, which for a summer item I think makes sense, so you could make Drops Daisy work as well. And well, I think the loud colors on this are very fun. I really enjoy the item that she knitted for her. For me, I think I just wouldn't wear this item as much if it was so loud and had that much going on. I would just kind of, I don't know, it's like such a statement that I wouldn't want to put it on again in that week, you know. So I would probably go for something more muted in palette. I would maybe choose like 2 to 4 neutrals that are very low contrast, but I don't know, you could still like see the stripes and the pattern on it, but without having every bit of attention on your shirt. This is one of the few shirts where I would say the body ribbing actually makes sense here, because so many summer shirts, they have this body ribbing and it kind of cinches in the shirt at the bottom, even though it had like positive ease around the chest. It just looks weird to me. But since this is so tight-fitting, I would say the ribbing makes sense here. I would leave that as well. This is the Stripe Overload Polo Tee by Spectacle Strick, and what I enjoy about this is, first of all, the tiny stripes that are very in at the moment and are pretty much everywhere. I enjoy that it has the oversized fit that I want, but this like little collar from the polo that is not all that common in knitted items, so I think it would be a fun thing to try. And it comes in sizes extra small with a circumference of 92 centimeters up to a 3XL with 135 centimeters, and is knitted on a DK weight yarn on 3mm needles. The suggested yarn is the Petunia Rauma, which has 100% cotton and is fairly affordable, so I don't necessarily see a reason to swap this out. You could go for linen, like the Langyarns Crealino, if you wanted to replace it with a linen for whatever reason. This is one where I would probably change the hem, because it doesn't really look like it cinches in on the pattern pictures, but it also doesn't show a person wearing the shirt. But when I go to the project pictures, it does look like it gets a little bit smaller at the bottom, which I don't really like, so I would just omit the ribbing probably if I knitted this. It also seems, yeah, quite a bit smaller on some people depending on which pictures you look at, so I would be careful with the sizing. I think this would be perfect for an ugly color pairing, like a red and blue or a purple and green, just something that's very weird together. I think that would look really, really fun. It kind of counteracts the preppiness of a polo, so that's probably what I would go for. But obviously you could make this in very basic colors with just 2 neutrals as well, and have a very easy, goes with everything type of polo shirt that can also look quite professional, I would say. Moving on to the crochet section, I am a little bit sad that this is shorter, but I think there might just be less patterns on Ravelry. I think if you look at YouTube tutorials or patterns anywhere else on the internet, You can definitely find more, so if you have more cool crochet patterns, you can suggest them in the comments. The first pattern I want to introduce you to is the Nami top by Alana Mial. It is this very airy zigzag type of shirt. It comes with a ton of different options in the pattern, so you can make it long, you can make it short, you can make it a top, you can make a flayed long sleeve. You can clearly do whatever you want, and it is also made to measure. For the yarn, it suggests the Rainbow Cotton by Hobbii, which is very affordable and has literally 100 color options, so I don't see any problem there. If you wanted to go for linen, you could do the Crealino by BC Garn. I don't even know what I would do with this. There's just too much choice. I don't know. I like the long sleeve version the most, I think. And I think you could still wear that in summer since it just has holes in it. And color-wise, I could imagine doing just rainbow very well, just getting all the colors of the rainbow and alternating them to make stripes. Or what could also work really nicely is to pick one color and just get different tones of that color and do stripes like that. So I think this is a cool item because you have so much room to personalize it to your liking, whether you want to change the fit or what exact item you're even making, or the colors. I think you have tons of option with this. Next, I want to suggest two very similar items because they are both button downs, which is quite unusual for crochet or knitting or something, I guess. I don't know, I haven't seen many knitted or crocheted button downs, but it's a very cool thing to make. And the first one is the polo shirt by Elodie Courat. It has this same wavy shape as the previous item, and it kind of reminds me of like a Hawaiian shirt, but in crochet form. For the sizing, it doesn't mention a bust circumference, but it only comes in 3 sizes, so I would only go for this if you're sure that you can find something in most size ranges. If you're someone who falls more on the edges of most size ranges, I probably wouldn't buy this pattern. It is made with a sport weight yarn on a 3.5mm hook and suggests a basic cotton yarn. I have very few notes on this. I like the yarn, I like the colors, I like the cut of this. I would keep the colors low contrast like they are in the picture, and that's basically all. The second one is the Yolanda shirt by Cosmonaudi. It is very similar but with lace, I guess. And I don't know, I like the contrast between the more feminine lace, I guess, and the more masculine shape. And I really enjoy the white details on all of the edges. It has bigger size range, so it comes from an extra small with a bust circumference of 71 centimeters up to a 5XL with a bust circumference of 158 centimeters and is made with a fingering weight yarn on a 3.5mm hook. The suggested yarn for this is Shapier's cotton, but all of the previously mentioned ones work as well. I also have no notes on this, I don't know. I enjoy the design, I enjoy the color. If anything, I'd probably add one more button to the button band because I like leaving the first 1 or 2 buttons unbuttoned, and I think you would have like more options to pick whether you want to open just one or if you want to open 2 if you had one more button there. Because I wouldn't necessarily open the next button on this shirt, but I think if I had another button I would open 2. So that's probably something I would change, but other than that, I think this is a really cool button-down option. This is probably another one of my favorite items today. It is the Gia Gia shirt by Jeffy Lang, and it's kind of a cardigan, but kind of not. I think you could wear this as a shirt with nothing underneath if you moved the double crochet lines here a little bit, like you could move them a little lower. Because I don't know, I feel like, I mean, there's an example picture where somebody's wearing it without something underneath, but I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable leaving the house in that because, you know, if you move you can basically see everything. I don't know how they made these buttons, they are so cute. And you have the option to just use regular buttons as well if you prefer. I like that this is so lightweight and airy, and it's also made to measure, which is nice. It is made with a sport weight yarn on a 3.75mm hook, which is also oddly specific, and also uses the Hobbii rainbow cotton, which I guess works for most of these projects in crochet. I like the white version the best. The airy top and the fit just scream summer to me, so I would keep the color very summer as well. And I also think that the shirt already has enough interesting attributes going on without a loud color. You can obviously wear this with all kinds of shorts, but I think it would look great over a dress as well, so you kind of have a little cardigan to cover up if it gets colder in the evenings, or maybe if you're going to an event like a wedding. I think that would be a really interesting option too. This is the Everyday Chill Tee by Isabella Filova. It is a similar shape to the previous one, but more of a basic, I guess. You can make this as either a shirt or as a sleeveless top as well, and I feel like the buttons make it look very delicate. I'm not quite sure about the sizes. It says it has sizes from extra small to 3XL, but it also says that it has instructions to make any size directly for your body. So I'm not quite sure if it has pre-made sizes or if it's made to measure. I don't know, but I think most people should be fine regardless. It is made with a fingering weight yarn on a 2.5mm hook, and the suggested yarn is not available where I live, but it is a fingering weight cotton, so it's pretty easily replaceable. You could use a drop saffron, or the Hobie rainbow cotton works as well. I would probably make it in a bright red, and I really enjoy the shape on this, so I wouldn't make any changes to the fit. If you wanted to make it even more girly, you could probably add some picot edges to the sleeves and the body. I think that would look really fun, and this would be a cool item to do this on. Moving on to an item that I would probably wear to play mermaids. It is called the Beginner Lace Crochet Top by Keeks and Jack Crochet. And I enjoy a lot of things about this. I enjoy the sleeve shape somehow. As I said, it reminds me of a mermaid. So that is cool, and I also like that you can wear it both ways, so you can either have the V-neck in the front or the O-neck in the front. It also uses quite a big hook with a 5mm, which is kind of unusual for lace crochet, I guess. And it is made to measure, which is also fun. It suggests an acrylic and cotton mix, which is not something that I would use, especially not in summer if you get sweaty in it. I would just replace that with a regular cotton or a cotton merino. The Rama Petunia would work, for example, for cotton. I really enjoy the shape, I really enjoy the neckline, I would leave that the same. I also really enjoy the color on this, because I think that adds to the mermaid vibe, so I would keep it in the blues and greens. I would omit the ribbing. I think it doesn't look good on this shirt. I think I've mentioned a couple of times that I would leave the ribbing out or change the ribbing. I feel like on most summer shirts it just does nothing. I don't know. I feel like it kind of ruins the oversized vibe because it then cinches in at the hip. And for this especially, it kind of confuses me that the lace is so see-through and then the ribbing is so solid. So I would just get rid of that and continue the pattern to the same length that the ribbing ended at. Other than that, I think this is a really cool pattern, and it says it's beginner friendly, so if you haven't done lace crochet before, I think this would be a good opportunity to start doing that. This is the Candy Top by CROCHET, or Hilo, I don't know. I think this is very interesting. It has this baby doll shape that's kind of coming back, I guess. It has the off-shoulder sleeves, it has a front cutout. It just has a lot going on in shape and color, and it comes in sizes extra small with a circumference of 86 centimeters up to 4XL with a bust circumference of 138 centimeters, and is made with a sport weight yarn on 2.5mm needles. It has a lot of suggested yarns. All of them are 100% cotton, so I think you can definitely find something there. It's kind of surprising to me that this is made out of 100% cotton since it's so tight fitting. But I guess if the pattern says it works, it works. This is a shirt where I would say I think this looks very cool, but I probably wouldn't make it for myself. It has a bit too much going on for me personally, but if you like the really loud shapes and colors, it might be for you. Also, I think the off-shoulder sleeves would annoy me. I need to move, I don't know. So this is cool for me to look at, and I will definitely recommend it. I think it looks very fun. I just personally don't think I would wear it much if I had it, so I won't make it. If I were to make it, I would make it in a pink and red though, I think. I like the white and red too, but I think the pink and red would tone it down just the tiniest bit while keeping the same kind of vibe. So I hope you could find something that you enjoyed today and you could draw some inspiration for the upcoming spring and summer months. I tried to find a good mix between more popular designers and lesser known designers, and between different techniques and shapes, so I think there should truly have been something for everyone. Definitely tell me in the comments what you're making, if you're making some of these patterns, if you have more patterns to recommend, and I will see you next time.